Welcome to the Social Workers radio talk show on WCDB Albany 90.9 FM with co-host Dr. Eric Hardiman and Alyssa Lotmore. Here at the Social Workers, we address issues important to our communities with social work students, alumni, and community partners as our guests.
As part of the University at Albany School of Social Welfare, we hope to take social work beyond the classroom and agency settings and directly to the public, because the public is the client. Catch us on air, online, and anytime.
Welcome to the Social Workers on WCDB Albany. We are found at 90.9 FM and also on podcast and on WCDBFM.com. Lots of different ways to listen to us. The Social Workers is a regular radio show and associated podcast that I co-host with Alyssa Lotmore. Welcome back, Alyssa.
Well, I'm so glad to be back because it's been a while. We haven't hosted shows in a little bit because I've been out on maternity leave, but I am back, and it's an exciting time to be back because it is the 60th anniversary of the School of Social Welfare.
So I guess a formal congratulations over the radio is appropriate, right?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, and
yes, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back, and I'm so glad that this first episode is where we're highlighting a very special guest because it's someone who was there at the beginning of the School of Social Welfare.
Yeah, so we have a very, very special honored guest, someone I consider to be a pioneer in social work in the Capital Region. We have with us today Bill Serafin, and Bill Serafin is a graduate of the very first graduating class of the UAlbany School of Social Welfare. 1967 was the year, and we are just thrilled and honored to have you on our radio show, Bill. Welcome.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
So, Bill, why don't you just start off saying what you're doing now? We'll sort of start where you are now and work our way back to 1965 when you decided to attend UAlbany. But let's say, what are you up to now?
Well, I'm still working 2 days a week at Koinonia Primary Care doing behavioral health. I work Tuesdays and Thursdays, full day. So, and I've been volunteering there now for 14 years.
Wow. Wow. So you're actually working 2 days a week as a volunteer.
As a volunteer.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, that says a lot about the spirit of social work and social welfare right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's and for those that are not familiar with Koinonia, we serve a very special population in terms of many are very poor. And so, they have multiple problems. So it's, and Koinonia has done some wonderful things in the community to help the poor. And they also have some very good community events, like for the summer, every Tuesday, July and August, they have an open like barbecue for the entire neighborhood.
Wonderful.
They'll serve like 200 people.
Wow.
They have a Thanksgiving dinner. So there's Koinonia. I'm very glad I hitched my start at them.
So we know that you're still active in social work, that you're giving back to the community, that you are, keeping busy, certainly 2 days a week, but also, really helping out with social issues that are happening locally here. I guess, Alyssa, maybe back to the beginning too. Bill, if you could sort of tell us, like, how did you get interested in social work back in 1965?
Well, I got interested in college. I got interested in various aspects of the correctional system. And I thought I would want to make a career of that. And then as I was graduating, mental health became a real national priority with a lot of funding and everything. So I decided, well, I'm going to probably pursue that.
Mm-hmm.
So in school, my two field placements were LaSalle the first year, the Division of Parole the second year. And then I went in the Army basically as a mental health practitioner,
Okay.
and turned out to be an incredibly good experience.
So I guess, I'm just so curious if you could take us back and maybe take the listeners back to what the School of Social Welfare was like when you first got there. You were the first class.
Yeah.
We don't know how big how many students were there, how many faculty, what was the general mood of the school for you at that time?
Oh, I think it was a big adventure, and I'm glad you asked that question, because everything happens in a context, and the Vietnam War was raging.
Yeah.
And since this was the first school, most of my classmates were much older than I was. They only accepted 6 students from college.
Huh.
Everybody else was working, and back then agencies were funding education.
Okay.
So the majority of my classmates were being funded by whatever agency they're working with, minus the 6 of us who were just graduates.
Sure.
And so the average age was probably 35 or more. There was classmates who were 40 years old.
Interesting.
And I was 22 when I started, 23 when I graduated. So hard to believe at my current age that I was either the youngest or second youngest. And the real fortunate thing for me is that I did graduate. Only 2 out of the 6 that were came from college graduated.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
And that was kind of scary, in a sense that the day after graduation, I would become 1A for the draft.
Mm.
And the blessing, and I really take that word serious, the blessing was that Dr. Rooney, who had just retired as a head of social work for the United States Army. So he helped me get a direct commission. And when I said the school might have saved my life, I said that in all seriousness, because I got a direct commission, and I had a very good Army experience, which fortunately wasn't in Vietnam as a infantryman or whatever.
Right, right.
I truly, I mean, the school, I really feel that, there was some spiritual or whatever, but I couldn't have done better.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at probabilities for me to be there and to have my assigned mentor, the recent retired head of social work in the Army, you couldn't do better than that.
What an incredible opportunity. Yeah.
And it was. And
Yeah.
I actually got my request, which doesn't happen very much. They call it the Army Dream Sheet. Where do you want to go? And I said, put in Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And after the 2-month training in San Antonio, there's where I was for my entire stay. And as it was, my predecessor at Fort Devens was volunteered to go over to Vietnam, and unfortunately was killed in 2 months and left a wife and 2 children.
Wow.
And I thought, well, there I go. But someone else volunteered, so I stayed at Fort Devens. So
okay. So back to the school for just a second before we talk about your career in the Army as a social worker, but back to the School of Social Welfare, just because I'm so curious. We're celebrating this year the 60th anniversary of the School of Social Welfare, and that's a big milestone for us as a school. So I'm so curious, to be in a graduate program in social work and social welfare in the mid 1960s, at the hotbed of social activism and,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Vietnam War and the war, everything swirling around you. What were the discussions like in the classroom? What was what was that feeling like for you?
Well, like you said, it was exciting times. Our classes, I wish I could remember the exact number in my class, but they were small.
Hmm.
So the real nice, to me, it was really good having small classes so that you really you had good professors teaching questions and answers and all the benefits that you wouldn't get with a huge classroom or lecture hall or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was that was a huge advantage.
And one thing I noticed, and there's Eric, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I showed Bill when we had his the reunion a few years ago, but there's a scrapbook from this first graduating class as well. They all cut newspaper clippings that were literally taped into this giant book and photos. And I could get a sort of a feel of the class, and you can see the differences in ages just from the pictures,
Oh
and
yeah,
just see there's a group of students who are still connected, and that's I think the students who I met with you, Bill, at the
right.
reunion. It seemed like a very close-knit class, and I don't know if you were saying it was because of the small classes, but it seems like there were a number of you who just still stayed invested and involved with the school, still stayed connected over all of over 60 years. So tell us a little bit
Wow.
about that, the peers that you are with, and why you still are connected after all of these years.
Well, I think it's because it was family really, and and the fact that I think everybody thought we were in the kind of like a the big experiment, and I that's not quite the word I wanted, but we were, you know, I think even the professor sometimes said, well, you're I don't think they used the word guinea pigs, but you're the ones that are, new, and this is an adventure. And
Yeah.
it was, and I think that they were really good in how they lined up classes. And, I still remember, because it was small, I still remember who my professors were. Of course, Dr. Rooney was special because he really helped me out. But
Yeah.
Dr. Ives, um, Hetty McKinley,
Mm,
um, who I guess lived to be 100, I think,
amazing. Yeah.
professor. And so it was good.
Yeah.
When you had a coffee break there, people chatted, and I think everybody was kind of like worried about graduating,
Hmm.
and because everything was so new, and uh, basically, uh, myself, as I said, I would have been vulnerable to the draft, but other people, they really needed their degree because they were going to get supervisory positions.
Right.
The school launched, I'm sure, a lot of supervisory positions because there were very few masters. As a matter of fact,
Right.
it was not unusual for social workers in the area that had their masters um, to have more than one job because they were in demand.
Interesting.
Because of some regulations and stuff like that. It was very interesting, and how good a job market was. And even I still remember the day the dean, Richardson Rice, said, it was one of our early meetings when the school first started. He said, you basically you picked a good profession, because if you took a dart and you threw it into a map of the United States, you could probably get a job within 10 miles of where that dart hit.
Amazing.
That was
Yeah.
really true back then. It's like you had multiple job offers,
Yeah.
which was irrelevant to me because I had already raised my hand to Uncle Sam.
Right. Right.
It's so interesting to hear all of the names that you've just mentioned, because I'm working on a timeline for our 60th anniversary celebration in our upcoming magazine. And there are certain names that I've been, filling in as we talk about our history of the School of Social Welfare. And firsthand of these individuals. You worked with them, you met them, they were instructors. So it's just really awesome to hear your perspective, because it's not me reading about individuals. You were there and you knew them. So I love that you're sharing this.
Well, it's like I said, I remember some of the professors really well, and so, some during the final months, when we were all doing group thesis, that was a tense time, and
yeah.
I was that was probably the scariest part for me in the whole 2 years, is to make sure that our group really we had 5, and I have to admit one of the professors used to kid me, Dr. Cohn. He says, I don't know if we should let you be with those, because there were 4 older women.
Okay.
They were probably mid-30s to late 30s, maybe, and a couple of them were in 40s, as I remember it. And I said, well, I don't know. They may be mothering you too much. It was, we had a really good thesis, and everything went well. And so we all graduated. That was the important thing.
So now you mentioned thesis. Was this a group project?
Yeah, everybody was in a group thesis.
Interesting. Okay. So that's something that we no longer do at the school, but I'm so curious to hear about that. I'm sure current students listening to this episode would be maybe relieved that they don't have to do that, but I'm so curious.
Let me tell you, it was really stressful, because they were, and I have to admit, I would admit that the 4 women on my thesis were certainly smarter than I was, but and they had been out working, so they had a lot more real work experience. But I still have my thesis. As a matter of fact, I walked by it the other day, and for some reason, probably because this subliminally was on my mind, the podcast, or the Zoom meeting, the podcast, that there's my thesis still there. And
what was it on?
You know what? I'd have to. It was. You know what? I'd have to actually go down and look at the title, but it had a lot to do with different types of criteria, I believe, for school and stuff like that. So, and social work interventions.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I guess, so it sounds like you joined the Army after you graduated and were serving in Massachusetts. First of all, thank you for doing that. Thank you for your service. But also, how do you feel like the school prepared you for the early part of your social work career?
Well, it gave me an opportunity to get into, it was a great card to open doors. And I would have to tell you that the Army, probably most people wouldn't think that that's going to be about as good an experience as you could ever get. But let me tell you, when I arrived there, fresh, just out of school, I was already on the emergency call for psychiatric, problems off duty.
Yeah.
And then I was assigned to a clinic. So let me tell you, the school helped me to know where you go for answers and stuff like that, because that was a learning curve that was almost straight up. it was a great experience, actually. I mean, we had 2 wards of double amputees. And if you're not old enough, but during the Vietnam War, every night on the news, they'd give the body count,
Wow.
how many people were killed. And that always offended me because they never mentioned, well, and 200 other people lost one or both legs or an arm, or
Right.
so two wards of double amputees because they used our own Claymore mines against us, and you know, learning to deal with them and phantom limb phenomena. And
Yeah.
I mean, it just was an incredible learning experience. Plus, I basically headed up adoptions and all sorts of child abuse. I
Wow.
got into virtually everything. I set up. There was a measles epidemic around there, which left a lot of children with speech and hearing deficits. So as I was learning to use the Army system, I got someone, a speech pathologist who was going to go into the infantry. I got orders cut to come to Fort Devens, and he set up a hearing and language clinic.
I see.
So there was all sorts of different opportunities.
So it sounds like your career in your early, at least the early part of your career, you were able to expand into all these areas that maybe you had not anticipated, and that, you know,
yes,
a social work degree allowed you to do that.
yep.
Yeah.
And it seems like a social work degree also helped prepare you. I mean, some of the stuff that you mentioned from, you know, working with double amputees, the body counts, having that social work background must have helped prepare you for some of that trauma that you were experiencing too, being able to know how to handle that and how to work with individuals to move forward. What was that like going in at, you know, 23 years old or 24 years old and having that type of experience with that social work background?
Well, what it does, it brings me back to a couple of my favorite classes. Dr. Ives, you know, taught human development, whatever the formal title, and they had a guest lecturer, Dr. Dale Harrow, who at the time was an assistant commissioner for the New York State Health Department.
Mm.
And you know, learned a lot in those classes in terms of, you know, the basics. And Dr. Ives was tough on her tests, and and the biggest joke in the school was that she gave one test and a couple of questions. What is so and so? What is and no one got it. So that became a joke for the best part of 2 years in terms of, you know, whatever the question was. Right now, it's too long ago, but well, we'd all kid about that, you know. And,
Right.
But we learned a lot.
So I'm also curious, you know, you mentioned going into mental health, and that was sort of a passion of yours. Maybe I'm putting words, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that sort of being having some interest and expertise in mental health is important to you. You were also around at, you know, through various eras of mental health, and, you know, the sort of public awareness of what mental health challenges are. And you probably saw, I would imagine, from the mid 60s onwards, the mental health system changing. I mean, I know a lot of that history about how the community mental health system developed in the US, and you got to see the expansion and contraction and
Yeah.
lots of ways that mental health has changed. I wonder, I mean, you've had this, I almost want to say bird's eye view, but it's more than that. You're really on the front lines of mental health work. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I after I got out of the service, I worked a brief stint in the VA, and then I went to the New York State Department of Mental Hygiene.
Okay.
And that's before they were separated out to their 3 other offices. And for a while, I did certifications for the whole state for back then, all 3 disabilities, mental health, had alcohol and mental retardation, developmental disabilities, and went around the state trying to, get places to meet standards. I could really tell some, and I still do tell some tales on some of our quote raids on because there was a lot of facilities in the Catskills that were not doing well financially, so they were all trying to get licensed, or many try to get licensed as private schools for the developmentally disabled.
Interesting.
And that was all because of the Willowbrook consent decree.
Right.
I don't want to waste your time, and
yeah, I know all about it. Yeah.
okay, good. So,
Yeah.
and then some of the places were probably not any better than Willowbrook.
Right.
That was a big adventure, and then I decided I fortunately passed the program analyst test and became a program analyst for the North Country, all the St. Lawrence County, Franklin County, Lewis County, and I'm missing one, but and that got me to along the way when they changed the law to allow non-medical directors of mental health services for counties. I got offered the directorship in St. Lawrence County, so I went up there and for 13 years.
Oh, amazing.
And left as a human services commissioner. So I had the opportunity to really deal with mental health and social service all at the same time, which really was a great experience because I could make a decision on, well, what's the best funding? If I want to get this funded, which department is going to, can I get the most money for? So that was really probably the highlight of my career. And then I went to Gowanda Psychiatric Center because the regional director recruited me. And my wife thought that the St. Lawrence County job was going to end up killing me because I spent so much time, and it was, but I kind of thrived on it.
Okay.
So, and then I retired the first time as commissioner of mental health for Chautauqua County. And then I got bored real quick and took a job with one of my former colleagues who was at Gowanda Psychiatric Center, and he became executive director of Lakeshore Behavioral Health in Buffalo. So I became the director of quality assurance for 4 years, and then we moved back to the Albany area because my father-in-law at the time was 93. We came back to take care of him. So I hope that my answer
absolutely
answered your question, because I kind of, when you said about what was going on, a lot was going on between who ought to run mental health service, the counties, state, and to be honest, I don't think they've completely worked that out yet. And who ought to get funded by. But we put together a county directors conference of local mental hygiene directors, which still exists. Yeah. And I'm proud to say I'm the only living charter member that is on the not-for-profit papers.
That's incredible.
Corporation papers.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So if you know, I'm just going to do this for listeners, Bill, but if you're just tuning into the show, this is the Social Workers live radio talk show. I'm Eric Hardiman, and here with my co-host Alyssa Lotmore, and we are continuing to talk, have been talking with Bill Serafin, who is just an absolutely incredible pioneer of social work in New York State and is an alum of the University at Albany. He is a member, a graduating member of the very first class of the University at Albany's School of Social Welfare, which is celebrating its 60th anniversary. So we've been talking with Bill, and you know, it's so striking to me listening to you, Bill, that you know, I use the word pioneer, and I don't use that lightly. I mean, I feel like you have seen the front lines of social work, you've seen administration, you've seen leadership as a county commissioner. You have been involved in state level policy, county level policy. You've done so much in your career as social worker, and yet you're still going. You have this endless, what seems to me to be an endless energy and enthusiasm for social work.
Yep, and I want you to know I kept my license current. I'm good till 1983.
Okay.
I'm 1983. I'm sorry. Yeah, and what I meant to say, I'm good till I'm 83 years old.
Wow.
Two more
Wow.
years to go. I turned 81 this week, so
Oh, happy
two more years
birthday.
to go.
Yeah, happy birthday. That's amazing. Wow.
So did you ever
No,
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead, Alyssa. Yeah, yeah.
I was just saying, did you ever think when you were saying you were one of two college age, new students from the school, so into the School of Social Welfare, only 6 of you that were fresh from college at 21 years old, did you ever think that you would have this career and still be working at 81 years old? With a license renewal to your 83, did you anticipate this? Did you think that this was at all possible, or ever envision this when you were,
I
at your first day of class?
No, would have never thought that. But the one thing about me, I like to keep busy, and I like to think I can be productive.
Yeah.
Maybe others don't think that way, but I like to think I'm still productive, and I wish the two of you could see my professional library.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah.
I became a compulsive book buyer. I'm looking for places to donate it, and
Interesting.
Alyssa, I know you know her, Madeline Kennedy
Mhm.
is going to help me with that. So,
Yeah.
because the last thing I would ever want to see is for all my professional library to go to a landfill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and along those lines, Bill, I mean, one of the reasons, I don't want to speak for you, Alyssa, but one of the reasons that I love doing this show, and I think Alyssa does too, is that we get to go back in history and hear from folks like yourself. And sometimes that history gets lost. And so this special anniversary, 60th anniversary year of the School of Social Welfare is a chance for us to go back in history to hear from folks like yourself and to hear from some of the pioneers and really hear these exciting stories. And part of that's exciting to me as someone who likes history, but it's also, I think, hopefully of value to our current students and folks in the current community. So I guess I'm wondering, Bill, if you have any, this is a big question, so get ready. Do you have any words of advice and or suggestions to students who are maybe getting ready to graduate with an MSW with a social work degree now? What would you say to them, you knowing what you know and what you've learned in this profession?
I think that I would my advice would pick your first job very carefully, because I still think there's room, that the field is still just based on some of the emails I get, there must be some good job opportunities out there. So you're not just stuck. You have to take a job because it's the only job in 100 miles. And so I do think that people should follow their passion, pick their first job and something they're really interested in, and follow their passion. And that's basically what I did, because I was really interested in mental health. I got in certain circles, Milton H. Erickson was the best psychiatrist that has ever lived. And, you know, every time they have a workshop in Phoenix, to his foundation, they can get 3,000 people down there. And so I really got interested in Ericksonian psychotherapy and hypnotherapy, and I have all his collected works. I actually, my library, I would think, you know, to the right collector, would really be invaluable, because I've got books from some of the pioneers, and forgive me if I'm talking too much about things like this, but you know, there's books out there that I have that I can't believe collectors, besides the inherent wisdom in any of the books, they're just valuable.
Yeah, yeah. And your experience is so valuable, and I really appreciate you sharing that wisdom with any students that might be listening, or recent graduates even, Alyssa, you know, folks maybe that have just joined the social work profession, and they're just sort of figuring out what this whole thing is about and how they might make an impact. Because what I hear in your stories and you're telling us about your career is just a tremendous impact in mental health, in, you know, certainly in the military and in the veterans world, but also just in New York State in general. You know, you've really made a significant contribution to the state's well-being, and you know, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I want to thank, I want to go on record thanking Stephanie Wacholder, who helped me set up a scholarship for Dr. Rooney. Because my wife and I really thought, you know, he very much could have saved my life. And he certainly was so helpful in getting, that's another sub story that I won't get into, in helping me get a direct commission. And sometimes it's not who you know, it's whom you know.
Interesting.
That really helped in this case.
Yeah, and that idea of getting to know your professors, and that you know, and building relationships with folks, and maybe someone that you talk to in a classroom, it might seem like just a quick conversation, but if you build a relationship, that can lead to helping out with a career, with a job. And it sounds like that relationship with Dr. Rooney was really important for you.
Yeah, well, he just was a really nice person, over and above the fact that he was very smart, very accomplished, and it's really nice. And he was, as I said at the beginning, I couldn't have had a better mentor. You know, to land in a school where the retired head of the Army social work, and basically the social workers ran the Army mental health system.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, how lucky was that, or how fortunate or blessed, whatever, how you look at it. It's just worked out great. So I'll always be indebted to the school. You know, it really made, and I said at the very beginning, I doubt there's any other student, or if there are, there's very few students that had their life impacted so positively as I did. You know, if I had gone to another school, you know, I might have been killed in the first 2 months. You know, that was a bad time.
Yeah, absolutely. Alyssa?
No, I just was saying, I'm so glad that, you know, as you were saying, this was the first graduating, or the first time the school existed. You know, we never had a social work program, and you said it was like kind of like the quote unquote guinea pigs. But it seems like you had an amazing experience. You learned so much, have had a career, and continuing to build on that knowledge from when you were in school. It just seems like an overall great experience. And the fact that you're still involved 60 years later with the school, even agreeing to come on this podcast, I'm just really, really happy that you had such a wonderful experience at the school social welfare, and are continuing to be such an active and involved alum.
You know, my pleasure. And I'm so glad that for the 10th time that I landed where I did. And June 11th, 1967 was a great day when I graduated.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations, Bill, on, I know you're still in it, you're still working, but congratulations on everything you've achieved to date and just a wonderful career in social work. And like I said, thank you for all your impact. I hope as we embark on this 60th anniversary year that when we have some in-person events and celebrations that we'll get you there too, so you can come actually meet some of our current students and our current faculty. And, it'd be really great to get you connected in that way too.
Yeah. I enjoyed the 25th and the 40th. They were great celebrations,
Yeah.
and look forward to the 60th. So I hope I can get a couple more years of life going, so I will be available to go.
Well, we certainly hope so too. You are just an incredible Great Dane, someone who's an alum of the University at Albany, someone who is really represents kind of the best of the social work profession and the impact, the huge impact that social workers can make. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
people don't always see. A lot of what I heard you talking about was a lot of behind the scenes work too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole learning experience too.
Right,
How to
right.
be effective.
Well, I want to thank you, Bill, for coming on today. Even with some technical difficulties we had to get you on, we made it, and you had a wonderful, thank you for sharing this story with us.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for working out the technicalities, because I'm challenged. So I want to thank the both of you for working it out, because
You did really well. One of the things that for listeners who are just, learning about social workers are nothing if not persistent. So we appreciated you being persistent and sticking with the technical difficulties, and we finally got recording, and I think we had a great conversation. For folks that have been listening, we've been talking to Bill Serafin, who is a member of the first graduating class of the University at Albany School of Social Welfare. The school is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and you've been listening to The Social Workers, a live radio show and talk show and associated podcast with myself and Alyssa Lotmore. Alyssa, any?
No, just stay tuned for more episodes, because we're going to be highlighting throughout this academic year a lot of different individuals from over the past 60 years, from students to former students to faculty members to former deans. So there's a lot to be looking forward to. So stay tuned.
It's going to be a great year on the social workers. We have so many conversations ahead and so many things to celebrate. And this whole year is just an incredible celebration. So I hope listeners will stick around and find out all about the School of Social Welfare at the University at Albany. Thanks again, Bill. And
thank you.
Tune in again to WCDB Albany 90.9 FM.